Kindly, the Mediterranean Sea knocks at Tunisia's coast. Invitingly, white-tinged villages and towns return the greeting. Europe and Africa are Kindly, the Mediterranean Sea knocks at Tunisia's coast. Invitingly, white-tinged villages and towns return the greeting. Europe and Africa are united by Tunisia's joy of living and by the witnesses of a millennia-old, often painful history. Here, simple matters also have style. And every splendor creates respect, but does not create distance. No other desert land is quite so fertile and full of strength. No other country on the sea is quite so steady and so quiet. Tunisia simply fascinates by its diversity. This diversity, however, is not a matter of the moment. Let's go back 2,500 years. At that time, Carthage ruled over the entire Western Mediterranean. The people of Carthage were merchants who knew no compromises. They heaped riches upon riches. Like hungry lions, they put their paws on Spain, Sardinia, and Sicily. All that is left now are poor remains which rather hide than document the former greatness. All too heavy was the tribute they had to pay to Rome. Hannibal embodied splendor and downfall at their best. The young military commander set off with his famous groups of elephants. He occupied all of Spain, crossed the Alps, and left only Rome alone, which proved to be a big mistake. Marcus Cato added fuel to the enmity unceasingly. His words, "As for the rest, I am of the opinion that Carthage must be destroyed," are not merely history, but became deadly reality. 150 years later, Julius Caesar ordered the reconstruction. Under Augustus Octavianus, Carthage was given the finishing, but now obviously Roman touch. Thousands of Romans settled at Carthage. Even today, their traces are evident, but it's also evident why this new African province was so very popular. It was due to the rich yields that Tunisia's soil provided. Once more, the goddess of fertility was gracious to the imperialists. Rome also cleverly used the Carthaginians' high standard of handicraft skills for itself. And it was due to this new melting pot that even a legendary Greek, Odysseus, was paid tribute to. Nowadays, Carthage is a center of recreation at a short distance from Tunis, a city of 1 million inhabitants. It is an open-air museum, the country's historical landmark, and above all, a prime tourist attraction. The predominance of the Romans lasted for 300 years. Over a period of 300 years, they kept building. Their iron will overcame the greatest obstacles, such as every single stone for Carthage having to be carted 90 miles from the quarry of Cap Bon, a job for thousands, and over several generations. And the same generations of stonemasons hammered their delicate ornaments into the limestone. But Carthage also gained a place in Roman history books thanks to great personalities, such as noble ladies, philosophers, writers, and bold technicians. such as the technician to whom Carthage owes its drinking water. At Saguan, about 40 miles away from Carthage, they impounded the mountain springs in a huge water temple. It has been handed down that the Emperor Hadrian himself had to give his consent to that huge project. In order to lead the precious liquid to faraway Carthage and keep it clean, thousands of pillars had to be constructed up to dizzy heights. Thus, a huge aqueduct was built. The water pipeline, which now runs under the soil, still covers the same 40 miles. The gods were gracious. Thirst was overcome. But what about hunger? Carthage has a nickname, the breadbasket of Rome. Every year they delivered up to 350,000 bushels of wheat to their mother country. And still Carthage had enough to eat. Even nowadays, the fertile north is one of the special qualities of independent Tunisia. However, many centuries and many wars had to pass by before independence was obtained. Vandals, Byzantinians, and finally the Arabs occupied the country. Since then, Islam and the Arabic language have determined life, culture, and education in Tunisia. High Arabic, which to us is so cryptic, is the best proof for the power of unification originating from Islam. The understanding of the other person became a quality of life. The Kudebs, the new schools and nursery schools, removed many inequalities. Who had been rivals up to then suddenly found themselves united under the aegis of Allah. And above all, the book and its written word gained entrance to the farthest corners. He who carries within himself the Quran, a humanitarian understanding and love for the fellow man, may possibly brave danger more easily. And the Tunisians still had to brave several dangers, such as the wild pirates of Barbarossa. Spain, in its turn, felt itself threatened and recaptured Tunis. And only 40 years later, the country was incorporated again, this time by the Turks. God knows, Tunisia saw much blood. And once again it became the plaything of the mighty. France appeared on the scene and declared Tunisia its protectorate. Towns were starved out. Opposition was growing. Habib Bourguiba took over the leadership. After 20 years, he was successful. France withdrew. Tunisia was free. Tunis itself underwent the greatest changes. Only the Medina, the old part of the town, remained unchanged. Its greater part is now up to European standards. Modern Tunisians grow up bi- or trilingual. They are well educated, enjoy life, and are efficient in business. The women are very self-confident. President Bourguiba granted them the right to vote. He forbade polygamy and achieved a say for women in matters of marriage and divorce. Habib Bourguiba is the father of modern Tunisia. His work needs no comment. It is visible wherever you look. At the age of 84, Bourguiba resigned. The big clock is a reminder of that date, the 7th of November, 1987. Tunis gave its name to the entire country. And Tunis has been the capital for more than 800 years. The Medina was then the metropolis. Even today, it's the same pulsating commercial center. Enjoy the oriental joy of life or a glass of peppermint tea. The small souks, the markets, are like toy shops, and shopping really becomes a game there. Believe me, he who is friendly achieves the better price, not the one who is persistent. By the way, the souks are arranged according to guilds. Every trade, be it clothmaker, weaver, or tailor, has its own market. Only the pros are everywhere. At the very north of Tunis, reached across the Beb al-Hadra Square, there is the Belvedere, a 100-hectare park, a dorado for animals. This oasis in the midst of the capital grows subtropical vegetation, and the zoo alone is worth a visit. As regards craftsmanship, Tunisia is the country of many great anonymous masters. Whether blacksmiths, locksmiths, or any other trade, there are families in which, for generations, fathers have passed on their great skills to their sons. We'd like to let you know another address at Tunis. The National Museum, located in the suburb of Le Bardo, which is housed in the former harem of the king, has a total of 29 halls. It will give you an insight into the times of Carthage, the period of the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs. The Bardo Museum has gained world fame, especially for the reason that it possesses the largest collection of Roman mosaics. For millennia, the sea has determined Tunisia's fate, and in that, nothing has changed. Approximately 850 miles of coastline, with mostly sandy beaches, have led to the friendly occupation of Tunisia by millions of tourists. This is what today's armed forces look like. Tunisia lures with honest arguments, with much space, but also with a lot of entertainment. A clean country also deserves a clean sea. The wealth of fish speaks for itself. By the way, I'd like to recommend Tabarka to deep-sea adventurers. There is a rocky coast, coral reefs, and a big diving school. It's the town of the snorkelers, lobster fishers, and of coral jewelry. The town is dominated by a Turkish fortress. Near Bizerta, one of the oldest settlements of the country, there is an almost unreal paradise. a republic of animals. It is the lake of Ishkul, a biotope, the proud inhabitants of which are flocks of flamingos. Please note, a visit to the reserve is only possible if you take a guide. Only once does Tunisia defyingly point a giant finger out into the sea. It's the Cap Bon, with its tourist centers of Nabil and Hammamet. Elegant hotels, swimming pools, magnificent complexes, 33 miles beach of fine sands. If you hear tourist center and expect masses of tourists, you'll be pleasantly surprised. In spite of all the modern hotels, these places are also alive out of season. You will understand why well-known painters got their inspiration there, why so many celebrities settled there. Hammamet offers recreation and protection, cultural holidays, and an open, youthful, fresh atmosphere. And since we know that the famous French cuisine was also the cuisine of Tunisia for 70 years, you will certainly enjoy the pleasures of the palate. Haven't you always wanted to try couscous, the national dish of Tunisia, or brick, a sort of fried pancake with egg? Or what about an alouche filgol, which is served right out of the cooking pot? Or perhaps something on the spit. Enjoy your meal. And of course, cheers. Tunisia's grape varieties are famous. This again is guaranteed by the French palate. Be it a white wine, a rosé, the well-known red Magon or Sidi Sad, every one of them is excellent, irrespective of the vintage. Be careful, the wines are strong, and sometimes the world begins to spin. You have guessed correctly. We will now watch parts of the show program at the hotel. Back to 1001 Nights. We have now landed at the traditional Friday market at Nabil. The entire hinterland meets there. Holidaymakers are integrated as a matter of fact. The experience is perfect. Selecting and buying becomes the most important, trivial matter in the world. Why not, for once, use the only word in the Tunisian language you know, Carthage, if you're interested in the price? If you have ever been to the market of Nabil, you will at once feel at home. It is mostly the small and very small farmers who provide nourishment for the 7 million inhabitants and all their guests. You should, by all means, take a short tour to the interior of the country. You will encounter endlessly broad olive groves, dense orange and lemon orchards, and again the stone witnesses of bygone times. Bulla Regia, for example, which is situated in the middle of the most fertile northern part of the country, was founded by the Phoenicians more than 3,000 years ago. At the time of the Romans, it was a particularly fashionable residential area. From the remains of the magnificent buildings, one can see that the distinguished colonial masters lived well here. So far, 4 Roman centers have been excavated: Bulla Regia, Dougga, Tubebo Magus, and the mighty Carthage. A place worth seeing is the living quarters at Dougga, which lie 5 meters deep under the soil. The cellar did the job of an air conditioning system and succeeded in keeping the precious mosaics the way they were 2,000 years ago. Dougga has the reputation of being the best preserved and most impressive Roman town in all of North Africa. Take sufficient time for a visit. Our next stops are Sousse and Monastir. Sousse was destroyed many times. In the 9th century, this town was given its appearance, which is now so typical for it. Even the clothes of the women in the Sahel are different. This typical red dress, which the market woman wears so proudly, is called meliere. Sousse of today, with its almost 200,000 inhabitants, is the 3rd largest town in Tunisia. With its fortress and town walls, Sousse could not possibly be mistaken for any other town. Probably Monastir would have overslept the 20th century had it not been for President Bourguiba, its most famous son, who aroused this sleeping beauty by kissing it awake. There is a lot of free space on the most beautiful beaches of Tunisia, that coastal wonderland, though 3 million people make their holidays there every year. Perhaps they simply make more effort in Tunisia. As for modern conveniences, it's true, the guest is king. As for service, as we said, the guest is king. And as regards the royal sport itself, there are already 5 golf courses in the country. This is the most beautiful one, the golf course of Monastir, the new, elegant holiday resort of Tunisia. Holidays at the edge of the Sahel are holidays in luxury for young and old. The Bourguiba Mausoleum is the landmark of the town and can be seen from far away. Port El Kantaoui, with its hotels and restaurants and its yacht harbor at the sea, is the 3rd gem on the necklace leading to success. This too is part of Tunisia, Jerba, North Africa's biggest island. Jerba, that's almost synonymous with an unbending desire for freedom, but also with the fact that desired freedom can become a battle without end. Jerba, that's a very special piece of nature, with a very special kind of people, with their own special way of living. On Jerba, they are happy about every guest, and yet do not allow any of them to distract them. Too many have been driven away from here by poverty. Those who stayed on mastered their lives in an admirable way. It was only the tourism of the last 20 years that relieved the worst hardship. At Gelala, the potter's village, time seems to have stood still for thousands of years. Even the Phoenicians produced their pottery here. The potter of today still works the same way. The kiln, the palm frond for the fire, the potter's wheel itself, all those items you might only find in museums elsewhere. Here, they are still tools in use. The same movements, the same technique can be watched on Jerba in hundreds of tiny workshops. Every single piece is entirely unique. Another handicraft is typical for the Isle of Jerba, weaving. Materials, ornaments, combinations of colors. Neither father nor grandfather nor any ancestor have ever used anything else or done anything else. Another example shows that Jerba is different. A short time after Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 AD, a large group of Jews took shelter on this island. The people without a homeland found a new home on the island. In gratitude, the synagogue, La Chriba, the miraculous, was constructed. La Chriba is one of the most beautiful Jewish places of worship in the world and has become a place of pilgrimage. Every year, hundreds of faithful make their pilgrimage here from far and near. The group of Jerba Jews constitutes an integral part of this exotic country. There are 1,000 of them out of a total of 80,000 islanders. The island with the golden beach of golden sands. That's what Gustave Flaubert said about Jerba enthusiastically. And Flaubert actually was a realistic master of telling stories. It's true that Jerba gives a bit of Caribbean touch to the north of Africa. Here the sizes of hotels, shops, and restaurants are still right. And even the native population will allow nothing to deflect them from the course of matters, come what may. The Gulf of Gabes, lying exactly between the village of Gabes on the mainland and the Isle of Jerba, is rich in marine fauna as is no other place in the Mediterranean. It pays that Tunisia has hardly any industry which might secretly make its wastewaters disappear in the sea. And should you visit Gabes, that oasis at the sea, then you must treat yourself to a ride on a horse-drawn carriage through the paradise wrested from the desert. "26 miles deep into the interior of the country, you encounter another Tunisian miracle, a kind of lunar landscape, which, however, is inhabited, and whose supposed craters at second sight turn out to be underground dwellings. 8,000 people live here in this town of cave dwellings. They are friendly people, in spite of their tough struggle for survival. An entire clan lives off just a few sheep. And again, millennia seem to have come to a standstill. The caves of Matmata are the best place of refuge for man and animal when the hot Scirocco is blowing. 10 meters below, in the chalk stone, there is a bearable climate for living, even if there are 50 degrees centigrade in the shade. Every visitor will notice the advantage these mole people have in comparison to the houses of new Matmata. The Mirage has turned into an air-conditioned car, which will take us even further into the hot interior of Tunisia, to the Shat El Jerid, the biggest of 3 salt lakes. A thick crust covers the basin, which is 100 miles long. Only in winter is a little water likely to show here or there. The view over the lake seems to be endless. It ends in white nothingness. What was it the prophet said? God made all life out of water. Water, water, please. And indeed, at the shores of the salt lakes where the desert ends, all of a sudden there are date palm groves. It is green. There is the murmuring of water. Allah has made appear water from somewhere. Again, he has given life to a place. Agriculture determines life in the oases. Long distances must be covered in order to get water for man, animals, and fields. The Tunisians are real artists of irrigation. Where nature provides them with an opportunity, it grows and flowers, and fertility emerges out of nothing. Water almost magically attracts man. Sites of ruins indicate that there were human settlements here thousands of years ago. And wherever there is an oasis, you can be sure that there will also be a souk, a market, nearby. What has been wrested from the soil is all the more precious. You can buy vegetables, pomegranates, bananas, figs, and the typical fruit of the oasis, dates. Here the dromedary still does credit to its name, Ship of the Deserts. And being the good merchants the Tunisians have always been, they entice the guests to a ride on the camel. By the way, anyone not suffering from vertigo can manage to sway proudly high up there. But be careful. When it comes to getting off, opinions will differ. It's all right with him. He's earned a bit of money. And what does he mean? Perhaps you understand it. This also adds excitement to your holiday in the desert. A show of small animals for laughs and creeps. Where alpha grass is still growing near the desert, sheep also have their home, usually even in the midst of the town. Farmers come from far away to offer their wool to the merchants. Tozeur, at the edge of the Big Salt Lake, is such a busy center. Tozeur was a base of the Romans, and later it was an eager supporter of the Islamic religion. Here, too, the activities at the market are oriental, with all the frank cordiality of the people. For us, Tozeur was the starting point for a very special drive, 40 miles right across the desert, our destination being the mountain chain which forms the boundary to Algeria. Mighty hills on the tops of which there are oases. Chebika and Tamerza are the names of those rare wonders of nature. Only slowly did they come closer. Nowhere else have the palm trees grown so close to each other as here. An almost endless forest had to be crossed. And here again, there were witnesses of great days long gone by. The small tricklets at the edge of the path cannot possibly be responsible for all the green around. Nowhere nearby is artificial irrigation to be found, only some water babbling softly over rocks. But then we came upon the proof, a waterfall in the midst of the desert foreland. For Tunisia, such a spectacle is a sensation. And the washed-out rocks reveal what forces must once have dashed down into the valley. The region reminds one of the canyons in the Rocky Mountains. Gafsa, still in the region of the Salt Lakes, has retained a speciality of the Roman way of living, its Roman baths. By the way, the children work here truly in shifts. They ask the tourists to throw lucky pennies into the basin, and then they dive into it and collect their small fortune. These boys make up for the historical remains, which are not really worth seeing. At Sbeitla, you can still admire an entire Forum Romanum. The three temples were probably dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. This is where, in former times, the mysterious Roman town of Sufetula used to be located. Only the square stones of the Arch of Diocletian were all found and placed one on top of the other again. Our Roman round trip of Tunisia ends with a visit to El Jem. Here, the imperialists constructed another Colosseum, an amphitheater for 40,000 people. And like its bigger brother in Rome, it served initially as an arena for peaceful contests on horse-drawn carts. But later, Christians were thrown to the lions and other wild beasts. El Jem wrote a particularly inglorious chapter of Roman history. The by far more dignified influence of the Arab culture on land and people has again and again leaked out from our short report. Now, at the very end, we are going to dedicate the climax to it. To the painters of ornaments, to the carvers who with simple knives produce filigree works of art as if by magic, to the potters who even nowadays shape original pieces of ancient tradition, And of course, to the builders of the mosques, who would really deserve more than merely the sympathy demonstrated here. To all those 120,000 Tunisians who create their objects with heart and soul and brain and unfaltering faith, may all of them receive our official thanks. If it wasn't for them, Tunisia and the entire world would be much poorer. Kairouan, from where the Arab triumphal procession across Tunisia started, is the center of the oldest folk craft of all, the knotting of carpets. The mergum shows the mastery which those artists of the people have accomplished. The Aqaba ibn Nafa Mosque is an hour of birth, source of strength and memorial for all Tunisians. It was here that Muhammad's companion thrust his sword into the soil and exclaimed, "This is Kairouan, which will be a stronghold of the Islamic world until the end of time." Immediately afterwards, they started with the construction of the mosque. The triumphal procession of Islam began. 95% of all Tunisians are Muslims. The words of Aqaba ibn Nafa have come true. The mighty sun clock still determines the time of prayer. The muezzin announces it, and there is hardly any Tunisian who will not have visited this holy shrine at least once. Aqaba ibn Nafa has become a place of pilgrimage. It is the most important mosque in all of Africa. It is Tunisia's landmark. From the outside, it looks like an unconquerable fortress, and the interior is as beautiful as a fairy tale castle. Tunisia makes every effort to preserve this mosque. Tunisia, a young country full of strength, confidence, and joy of living. Come and see for yourself.